My name is Evelyn. I'm 52, and just 6 months ago, I was still wearing my wedding ring, even though he had already taken his off. His name was Richard. We were married for 23 years. Then one afternoon, he came home smelling like a perfume that wasn't mine and told me he was leaving. For her, Evelyn, he said, looking everywhere but my eyes. She makes me feel alive again. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. And I just stood there, frozen, like a statue of a woman who once believed in forever. He packed 2 suitcases, took his cufflinks, left his wedding album on the shelf, and drove off in the BMW. I helped him finance. I didn't chase him. I didn't scream. I sat down at the kitchen table, looked at the flowers I had bought that morning, and watched them die slowly over the next 7 days. 2 months later, my credit card was declined at the grocery store. It turns out he'd stopped paying our joint account, and the house? He refinanced it without telling me. I was drowning in debt, while he posted pictures of sunsets and champagne flutes with her, a blonde barely older than our daughter. The betrayal burned deeper than I could explain. He wasn't just gone. He had erased me, replaced me. I went to church again, sat in the back pew, listened to the pastor say, even when others abandon us, God does not. He is close to the brokenhearted. I cried behind my sunglasses. I didn't want anyone to see how hollow I'd become. Then, 5 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A hospital, they said. Emergency room. My husband, Richard, had collapsed. A heart attack. He was gone before I got there. I stood by the bed, looked at the man I once loved. He looked smaller, defeated, still wearing his Rolex, still smelling like cologne and regret. The young woman didn't come. She didn't even claim the body. She had left him 2 weeks earlier, according to the nurse. I went home that night and found an envelope on my doorstep. Inside, a copy of his will. And my name? It was still on everything. House, insurance, investment accounts, even the bank deposits from his last business deal. He had never changed a thing. Not even the emergency contact. It was still me. And as I sat alone in my living room, holding that paper in my hands, I realized something terrifying. He had left me. But he had never truly let go. The funeral was held on a gray Wednesday. No music, no photographs, just a closed casket and a room full of strangers pretending they had loved him. I wore black, of course, but not for him. For the woman I used to be. My daughter, Clara, stood beside me. She's 27 now, tall like her father, but with my quiet eyes. She hadn't spoken to him in over a year. When she saw his name on the headstone, she whispered. He used to read me bedtime stories. Then he vanished like a ghost. I wanted to defend him, but I couldn't. The truth sat in my throat like a stone. There were whispers all around us. She was the ex-wife? Why is she here? Didn't he run off with someone? But I didn't flinch, because I wasn't there for them. I was there for the paper clutched in my purse. The will! After the service, an older man in a gray coat approached me. Harold. Richard's business partner for 15 years. We'd had dinner with him and his wife a dozen times. I didn't know he left everything to you, Harold said, voice low. He told me he'd made new plans. I looked him in the eye. Apparently not. His mouth tightened. There's a lot of money involved, Evelyn. Investments, overseas accounts. You'll be hearing from people. I didn't answer, because what do you say when the man who broke you also made you rich? Back home, I unlocked the safe in the study. It still smelled like him, Inside were old checkbooks, our wedding certificate, a box of cufflinks, and a letter addressed to me in his handwriting. Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I made mistakes. I chased youth, but I never stopped loving you. I kept everything in your name, not because I forgot, but because I remembered you were always the one with a heart. Take what's left and build something beautiful. I pray God shows you more mercy than I did. Richard. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not shaking, just breathing. Clara came into the room. What is all this, Mom? I handed her the letter. She read it, looked at me, and said the one thing I never expected. So, what are you going to do with the money? I'm not sure, I told Clara. And that was the truth. The lawyer confirmed it all. Every asset, the house, retirement funds, even shares in an investment portfolio I didn't know existed, worth 7 figures. But with it came something else. A knock on my door. And behind it, a woman in her early 30s. Tall, elegant, expensive perfume. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. I'm Melissa, she said. The woman your husband left you for. I stared at her, still, silent. She shifted her weight. He said he changed the will. He promised me. I cut her off. He didn't. She blinked. Anger flashed in her eyes. I took care of him when you wouldn't. I gave him purpose. You think he really wanted to leave me everything to you? I stepped forward. I don't think, I said. I know, and now you're on my doorstep. That tells me everything I need to know. She looked at the ring on my finger. Yes, I was still wearing it. Not because of love, but because of memory, of the years he was mine. You're just bitter, she hissed. No, I said calmly. I'm free. She left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. That night, I opened the safe again. Not for the letter, but for the documents Harold had sent. And that's when I saw it. One of Richard's last investments was a real estate project. A loan, under my name. He'd signed the papers after leaving me. But hadn't changed the legal ownership. I was the guarantor. And the project? It was failing. The bank called the next morning. They were preparing to seize the property. And because it was in my name, I owed hundreds of thousands. Can you make a payment today, Mrs. Whitaker? The voice asked coldly. I'll call you back. Suddenly, the inheritance wasn't a gift. It was a trap, a poisoned apple dressed in gold. I went to see Harold again. I want out, I told him. Sell everything. Liquidate the shares. I don't care about luxury. I need clarity. He hesitated. There's one more thing, he said. He handed me a file, a trust fund, for a child, not Clara. A child I didn't know existed. A child? I asked, my voice barely audible. Harold nodded. He set up the trust a year ago, small at first, then added more funds this spring. Monthly deposits? The mother's name is Melissa. My stomach turned. He had a child with her, a child he never told me about, a child younger than our granddaughter. Clara found me sitting on the porch that night. She handed me a cup of tea and said, "You look like you saw a ghost." I handed her the file. She read every line. Her jaw clenched. She didn't cry. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I don't know. But the truth was, I did. I just didn't like the answer. Melissa hadn't mentioned the child. Not when she came to my door. Not when she demanded what she believed was hers. She was protecting him or hiding him. Either way, I couldn't sleep. I started looking through old emails, old bank statements, trying to piece together his final year. I found something strange, a payment to a church I didn't recognize, recurring, generous. I drove there the next morning. It was small, humble. The pastor greeted me warmly. I asked about Richard. Yes, he came often, the pastor said. He sat in the back. Quiet man. Always asked for prayers about his daughter. Daughter? Yes, little Anna. Said he wanted to do right by her. He knew his time was short. My heart ached. So he knew. The heart condition he never told me about. The deadlines he never shared. I looked at the stained glass behind the altar. A passage glowed in the morning light. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Proverbs 13:22. I whispered, but what about the man who wasn't good? The pastor smiled gently. Even the broken can leave behind something holy. That night, I called Melissa. Come to the house, I told her. Bring the child. She hesitated. Why? You'll see. 1 year later, I stood on a stage in front of women from every corner of the city. Some wore suits, some wore sorrow. All of them were survivors. The Evelyn Whitaker Foundation had opened its first center. Childcare, counseling, financial education, all funded by what was once a man's escape plan, now a woman's purpose. Clara sat in the front row. Ethan held her hand. Melissa stood beside me, holding Anna, now 4, on her hip. My husband left me for a younger woman, I said into the microphone, but I was the one who stood at his funeral, holding the will. And what I chose to do next, that was my real legacy. Applause echoed, but I didn't smile for the crowd. I smiled because I meant every word. Later that evening, Claire and I walked in the garden. Do you miss him? She asked. I thought for a moment. I miss the man I married, not the man who ran, but yes, sometimes. She nodded. I think he'd be proud of you. I think, I said softly, he finally gave me something that mattered. A quiet pause. Then I turned to her. Ready to go home? She smiled. I already am. And as we walked back, hand in hand, the wind stirred the flowers. Software, steady. A whisper from the heavens, perhaps. And in my heart, I heard it again. Even the broken can leave behind something holy. Melissa arrived the next morning, hair tied back, no makeup, and holding a little girl by the hand, Anna. She had Richard's eyes, big, curious, quiet. Melissa didn't look at me when I opened the door, just walked in like someone entering a courtroom. Anna clung to her leg. Does she know who I am? I asked. Melissa shook her head. She thinks her daddy's on a trip. I knelt down, met Anna's eyes. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly. I'm Evelyn. She stared for a moment, then held out a crayon she had in her hand. I took it. A peace offering from a child who didn't know the war she'd been born into. We sat in the living room. I poured tea. Melissa didn't touch hers. What do you want from me? She asked, arms folded tight. Nothing, I said. She blinked. I want to set up a fund for Anna, bigger than what Richard left. Her eyes widened. That money was yours. No, I said. It was pain. And if pain must exist, let it at least feed something good. She stared at me, stunned. I don't understand. I'm not doing this for him, I whispered. I'm doing it for the child. She didn't ask for any of this. Melissa covered her mouth. Tears fell, silently. And then something broke. She confessed it all. How she had begged Richard to change the will. How he refused. How in the end he was terrified and ashamed. He said you were the only woman who ever knew him, she whispered. I thought he hated you. I think, I said, he hated himself. Anna climbed into my lap, a small, warm weight, innocent, undeserving of the betrayal woven into her birth. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would not live in bitterness. I would not let wealth poison my soul. I would rebuild something sacred, even from ruins. Word spread fast that I was giving away part of the inheritance to his child. To asterisk her, friends called, neighbors gossiped. Even Clara sat in silence for a long time before speaking. I don't know if I could have done what you did, she said. I looked at her. Neither did I, until I held that little girl. Clara nodded slowly. She looks like Dad. I know. Then she looked up, tears in her eyes. She also looks like me. It hit me then, the complexity of it all. Clara had lost her father, but now shared blood with a stranger. I reached for her hand. We don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. We just have to decide what kind of people we want to be. She gripped my hand tight. I want to be like you. Weeks passed. I sold the vacation property Richard had secretly bought with Melissa, used the proceeds to pay off the failing real estate loan, closed joint accounts, moved everything into my name, legally, officially. I kept the house, the garden, the old piano Clara used to play. I started fresh, but not alone. I began volunteering at the church Richard had visited, helping mothers in difficult financial situations. Melissa came once, then again. Now she helps organize events. We don't talk about the past. We focus on Anna, who's growing fast, and calls me Miss Eve. One night, Melissa stayed late to clean. She sat beside me on a bench outside. I never had a mother growing up, she said softly. Now my daughter has too. I smiled through the ache. I think we all needed to be mothered at some point. Then we sat in silence. Not enemies, not rivals, just women. Healing. I started waking up earlier, making breakfast for one, then sometimes for two. Anna loved pancakes shaped like hearts. Melissa began trusting me more. She went back to school, part-time, studying accounting. I want to understand money before it controls me, she said. I understood that more than she knew. One evening, I opened the drawer where I kept Richard's letter. But I didn't reread it. Instead, I tucked it inside a Bible I hadn't opened in years. Clara was coming over for dinner. I wanted the house to smell like rosemary and garlic, like it used to when she was little. And when she arrived, she brought someone with her. Mom, she smiled nervously. This is Ethan. He was kind, quiet, eyes full of respect. Later, as we cleared the table, she leaned in. Do you think it's possible to love again after being broken? I looked at her, at the table, the candles, the laughter that had filled the air just minutes ago. Yes, I said, but not because someone else makes you whole, because you decide you're worth being whole again. She hugged me, long and warm, and that night, I wrote something new in my journal. Today, I didn't cry. Today, I taught my daughter how to forgive. And maybe that's what healing is. It had been nearly 6 months since the funeral, and I still hadn't touched Richard's office. The door stayed closed, like a sealed memory. Until one morning, I opened it. The dust, the silence, everything exactly as he left it. I began packing, one box at a time, old photos, letters, his favorite pen. Then I found a small locked drawer in his desk. I almost left it, but something told me to look inside. I broke it open with a hairpin. Inside, an old envelope. No stamp, just a name. Clara. I called her. She came immediately. We sat on the floor. She opened the letter with trembling hands. He had written to her, apologizing, explaining, regretting. I left because I was scared of becoming invisible, he wrote. I thought new love would keep me young, but I only grew older and lonelier. He ended the letter with one line. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll be the most grateful soul in heaven. Clara wept, but not bitter tears. Not anymore. She folded the letter gently. Maybe he was a coward, she whispered, but he was still my father. And in that moment, I saw it. Forgiveness wasn't a grand declaration, it was a choice. One heartbeat at a time. That weekend, we held a small gathering at the church, just a few people. No flowers, no drama, just a simple tribute to a complicated man. Anna lit a candle. Clara read the letter aloud. Melissa sat in the back, holding my hand. The past was still there, but it no longer held us hostage. It was a Monday morning when the lawyer called. There's one last account, he said, an offshore investment. It matured last week, worth over $2 million. I sat in silence. $2 million. Enough to change anyone's life. But my life had already changed. I called Clara, then Melissa, and the pastor. We met at the church. I stood at the front, holding the document. This was supposed to be a legacy, I began. But a true legacy isn't just money. It's what you do with it. They watched me. I want to create something permanent, a foundation, in Richard's name, but in Anna's spirit, to help women left behind, mothers, widows, the ones who are always forgotten. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Clara nodded, tears streaming. The pastor stepped forward. That, he said, is turning grief into grace. Later that evening, Clara hugged me long and hard. You could have walked away from all this, she whispered. I did, I smiled. Then I walked back, but stronger. And that night, I stood in the garden. The flowers were blooming again. I touched the petals and closed my eyes. Thank you, I whispered into the wind, not to Richard, not to fate, but to the woman I had become.